What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It is I, your boy, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new episode. Welcome to A-Plus Hero Report, your stop for your breakdowns of Marvel, DC, television, and movie and news. Ladies and gentlemen, it is I. We're going to head and break down WandaVision for you guys today. We're going to be tackling episode number 6 that just aired on Disney Plus today, guys. We've got a ton for us to certainly get into today. It's not the full squad bringing you your WandaVision reviews. It's going to be myself along with Stuart Branscombe himself. What's going on, buddy? Good to have you on board.
Hey, good to be here. I'll tell you what, man, the major disappointment about this episode is that I have to wait 7 more days to watch the next one.
Yeah, man, tell me about it. It's a little bit trippy to realize that we do have only 3 episodes left, right? We're only getting 9 episodes in this season. We're pretty much past majority of it. So the end will be here before we know it, Stuart, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's too bad because I've been really enjoying the show, and it just getting this show in chunks. It feels like I'm always like in the middle of a really nice dinner, and then right as I'm about to take another really good bite of it, suddenly I got someone just come and just take that plate and then take that fork away from me mid bite as I'm about to chew on it, and yeah, they're like, "Oh, sorry, you'll have to wait till next week before you can have more."
Yeah, come back next week for the rest of your meal. You know, I totally feel you, man. Totally feel you. Yeah, Indy unfortunately is not going to be able to join us today. I think he is staying at work a little bit late today. I'm not sure what the weather is like, but I know the weather around everywhere is a little bit crazy right now. Out here in Dallas, our temperatures were like in the mid to high 20s right now, man. Like I'm not used to that here when it comes to Texas, but every once in a while, it'll definitely get pretty cold. I think it's actually supposed to snow this weekend, which is a huge abnormality out here in Texas. I feel like we don't get that very often.
Here it's really interesting because we have like this weird thing where it's just been like pouring rain one day, but then like the next day it's just like super sunny, and it's like that for the next 3 days until it starts raining heavy again. But one thing it does lead to is some really nice looking green hills around us.
Ooh,
like the hills look really nice.
I'm gonna have to check out the Bay Area one time, man. Once traveling gets a little bit safer, I might have to come out there, man, and visit. I've been to Cali a couple times, but it's usually been like Anaheim, Pasadena. I flew into LA, that type of stuff. Been to San Diego briefly, but never been to the Bay Area. So I might have to check it out sometime, Stuart.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some really cool areas, especially in San Francisco for sure.
You know, what I will say about the cold up here, though, it does provide me the opportunity to be able to sit in and catch up on a lot of my television shows and movies. So that is certainly kind of a blessing in disguise, if you will. And one of the episodes and shows that we watched this week, guys, WandaVision, episode number 6 wind up dropping as the mystery continues in regards to what's going on. So, Stuart, are you ready to get into episode number 6 with me, man?
Definitely. Let's do it.
Awesome, guys. And remember, as always, these are just simply our A-plus opinions. At the end of the day, though, we definitely want to go ahead and know yours. So if you had the opportunity to check out WandaVision this week, feel free to join in the discussion. Let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below. If you're watching this live or after the stream, we definitely want to go ahead and continue the discussion with you guys in regards to this particular week's episode. But we kick off once again, getting into a brand new decade of television here. I got to be honest with you, though, Stuart. I felt like I'm assuming maybe this was a Malcolm in the Middle kind of callback. I personally have never really watched a lot of Malcolm in the Middle, but that's definitely the vibes that I was getting, at least from the opening theme. So are we in, what is this, the 90s, early 2000s? What time period did that drop?
They skipped the 90s, I guess. The 90s are just overdone now because everyone talks about the 90s. I guess they didn't want to compete with that market, so they're like, no, screw it. We're just going to go straight to the early 2000s. So gone is the multicam sequence, and now it's all done single cam. And yeah, I think Malcolm in the Middle is the perfect show to use for that, because that was like, I believe, and I could be wrong about this, I think Malcolm in the Middle was like one of the first sitcoms to really break that format. Like the idea of, hey, we can actually put money into a sitcom and people will still watch it, and therefore we'll still make money from, from making this show. We don't have to fill it. We don't have to film the entire thing on like 1 or 2 different sets. We can actually have locations in our sitcom. And, the jokes don't have to be the same lesson of the week jokes. They can actually vary from time to time. And, the characters don't necessarily have to be good people.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point, especially now we've moved up a couple decades to more of a Malcolm in the Middle style. You really feel that they kind of expanded their world a little bit, got to see a little bit more of Westview, if you will. We got a lot of sort of the breaking of the fourth wall, right? Having the kids actually almost narrate a little bit of this show, as we had Billy and Tommy kind of talking to the camera from time to time, kind of getting us caught up as to what are some of the things that are going on in the household and whatnot. I kind of really enjoyed seeing the two twins kind of pushed to the forefront. Even some of the quick cuts or some of the quick flashback sequences that we see of like Pietro and Wanda remembering their past time when they used to trick or treat as kids. I just really love the format and how they wind up actually producing this week's show to really give it that sort of Malcolm in the Middle feel. I really appreciated it.
It was great because, yeah, throughout the previous episode, most of it, even though we did have some time with the kids, most of it was still focused on Wanda and Vision. So here it really felt like we got some time with the kids, like actually showing like their perspective on everything going on. And we see that they're not completely blind to everything. Like they do know that something weird is definitely going on between their mom and dad.
Yeah, I do love that. And let me give a quick shout out here to Archangel. This is my boy Daniel coming through. He says, "My dudes, this episode was freaking awesome. I'm really glad you enjoyed this episode, Daniel. I truly did, man. I mean, just the cliffhanger alone in regards to seeing what Wanda sort of unleashed kind of made my jaw drop a little bit. And honestly, it definitely made me shake my head like, no, don't do this, Wanda. Don't do this, Wanda. You're going in the wrong direction, type of thing. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed this episode, Daniel, for sure. Going back to the kids real quick, Stuart. We will get to the cliffhanger or at least the ending here in a second. Going back to the kids, I love kind of seeing not only them growing up, but also just their chemistry between one another, how well they're certainly getting along. Just the idea of them being brothers, picking on each other a little bit, right? Making fun of each other here or there. And really just the acceptance of Pietro as their uncle. I love the fact that at least Billy or Speed, whoever I believe that's Billy. I love the fact that he sort of gravitates towards his uncle. The idea that he too has speed, finds him as he's like the pretty cool uncle, that type of thing that lets him kind of get away with pranks and kind of pushes them type of stuff. I really enjoyed just kind of see how they admired Pietro out of all this. And I got to tell you, man, I really do love Evan Peters on this show. I think he fit perfectly as sort of that brother to Wanda here, along with that uncle that everybody loves, if you will. What did you think about Evan Peters and just his relationship with the boys?
Absolutely loved it. Yeah, I definitely agree. He was perfect. He fit perfectly into that role of like the cool uncle, the one that the kids like because this uncle lets you do stuff that your parents normally wouldn't let you do. So therefore, everyone loves the uncle better than the parents sometimes. And half the time, they're like, taking the uncle's side because they know it irritates their mom, and that just makes them want to take their uncle's side even more. I love that. Yeah, they got that down perfectly. And Evan Peters is interaction with the kids, like I loved it. I feel like he had really great chemistry with them, and just the entire time he would like kind of play with them when he was taking them trick-or-treating, it almost like didn't feel like he was acting. It like genuinely felt like we were watching some like people having a really good time on set.
Yeah, like it was almost like they were his nephews, if you will, like his real life nephews. So I'm kind of curious as to how everybody really got along, like you said, behind the scenes and on set at the end of the day. But one of the things that made me enjoy this episode really was the fact that this felt like a Halloween special. The fact that everybody gets the opportunity to kind of wear costumes, if you will. The fact that Billy and Tommy get to kind of harken back to their Young Avengers days. I thought their costume was pretty cool, along with Wanda and Vision, even a little bit of Pietro himself with those jorts, if you will, right? The jean shorts, bringing those back too. That was pretty fantastic. What did you think about the idea of this being sort of like a Halloween special episode?
Yeah, I loved that, and I loved being able to see like Halloween costume versions of all these different costumes that we get in the comic books. I remember there were some people complaining about that, saying that this is just an excuse for Marvel to sort of make fun of like how ridiculous these costumes would look if they were like literal versions of them. But I didn't get that at all. I got it more as like, this to me, it just reminded me more of kids when they want a certain costume, but of course they're not being sold in stores, so they're forced to be creative and put it together on their own. And not just kids, adults too. And that's kind of the feeling I got from it. It was just like a really cool homage to their comic book costumes, you know, and it looks exactly like how you would have put it together if, you know, you were making these costumes out of your own supplies. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say this definitely felt more like actual home supplies. Like it doesn't feel like Marvel went out of their way to make it look like a low budget. Like I feel like if they were planning on technically doing that, maybe we would have gotten actual costumes themselves. But the fact that they're just people that literally are putting stuff together that they're finding in their closet or at home, like you can clearly tell that they just kind of made this kind of stuff up. So I did love that aspect a little bit as well in regards to it. We got Jesse in here too. He says, "Great episode." Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the episode this week, Jesse. Glad you definitely appreciated it also. But one of the things that I want to talk about in regards to Pietro a little bit, one of the things that I have kind of come to realize, especially in this week's episode, you know, I think some people were maybe hoping that there was a little bit of a MCU connection here with this version of Pietro. You know, people thinking maybe he kind of came through from the Fox universe and kind of planted here in this world, if you will. One of the things after watching this episode, I'm really understanding is that this is the Pietro that we know. You know, clearly has the memories of their past, you know, again referencing the flashbacks. He even calls out Wanda for trying to test him on certain things, you know, references to them kind of growing up and things like that. So it definitely feels as though it's Pietro with memories, but simply just recast. And now Wanda certainly doesn't know how she wind up even recasting her own brother. But there are times, especially in this episode, where Pietro seemingly knows more than almost anybody else in this town. The idea of him at least referencing to us what he remembers when he died, right? The idea of being shot, dying, and then hearing his sister's voice and then being brought to this particular location. So he doesn't really even know himself, but he has at least found out or at least realized that Wanda, of all people, is the person that's kind of conjuring up everything in this town. So it was a little bit eye-opening for me that out of everybody, Pietro knows more than even maybe Wanda herself, or is at least questioning her like nobody else certainly would. So it does make me wonder, and I'm going to throw this to you, Stuart. Two questions. One, what did you think about Pietro's interaction with Wanda this week? And do you think Pietro could be somebody else?
I'm slightly now from this episode, because before last week, I think you and I both agreed he might end up just being someone from the town that was given the memories of her brother. But I don't know, the way he describes like him just kind of being there in the town, not knowing how he got there, whereas most of the other people in the town actually grew up there. It leads me to one of two theories, and one of them, you know, is the one that we brought up last week, is that he is the witness that Jimmy Woo like brought up. But then the other is that it actually is the same Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, but he does have the memories of you know, Pietro from the MCU. And the reason I say that is because, yeah, he doesn't, with him knowing what's going on, and not to mention, like, one of the things he also even brings up is the idea that even the people that Wanda changes, they still retain a lot of their personality. So, and the personality that we see of this version of Quicksilver is that of the Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, just with a very different set of memories. So it does seem like something that's very plausible, especially with what we see at the end when Wanda really goes all out with her powers and we see this barrier expand. If we see that she's able to do something like that, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say she was able to conjure up another person from, you know, another universe. So I do think both explanations are very plausible, and I'm very excited to see where they go with this. And it would also make sense with him if he is from the X-Men universe. It would also make a lot of sense of why he is the one to realize, you know, that something is going on here. Not everything is how it appears.
I mean, you definitely do bring a good point, because his personality is definitely not that of the same Pietro from Age of Ultron. He definitely does have that man-child sort of personality that we remember from the X-Men movies that have kind of carried over to this. So you're a believer that the MCU, or I should say the Fox X-Men stuff, is still in play here with Pietro. That's what you're feeling? At least one of your options?
I definitely think that a lot more now than I did last week.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, because I know last week we were pushing maybe the idea that we thought, like for me at least, I thought Jimmy I thought maybe he was Jimmy Woo's or James Woo's witness protection person that James Woo came back to Westview for. But we clearly see that even in this episode, when he does see a Pietro on the screen, he doesn't react at all. So I'm assuming that I mean, he reacts, but it's not what you would think in regards to, oh, that's the person I've been looking for this entire time. So yeah, I don't necessarily feel that that's holds merit any longer. So we'll see what happens with Pietro. It was just odd to me that he was, I don't know if it was just that twin link that they wind up having with one another, but if there was anybody that kind of understood or could tell what it was that Wanda was doing, asking him like, how are you doing this? It takes a ton of power to be able to do something like this. At least you've been keeping up with the ethical side of things, right? You've been keeping the couples together, not using the children type of stuff. So it definitely feels as though he knows more than what's going on. So I think for me, that's what part of me was like, I wonder if he is somebody else in disguise. I am wondering if he's probing Wanda to kind of see if she even knows what's kind of going on in her life, if you will. So I don't know what's going on, but I got to tell you, I'm glad it's Evan Peters, regardless, doing all this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I really do love what he's kind of brought to this show. Especially now that we're traversing through the decades here when it comes to television, he just feels like the perfect sitcom uncle. So I think it fits perfectly.
I also got to give a shout out to a reference that I don't know if it was there on purpose or if it was just me looking too deep into it. But the moment where he's taking the kids trick-or-treating and one of the kids is like, "Oh, kick ass." And then they zoom off. And then you have Wanda going, "Kick ass." Like, yeah, no, I couldn't tell that was like her. Like, yeah, to me, it felt like a total reference to Kick Ass, with both actors that played Quicksilver being in that movie. So yeah. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, most definitely, man. I definitely agree with you there. Jesse says, weird how he said she basically made him come. Yeah, and I guess it's the idea that, again, he wakes up, or at least he remembers that he's dead. And when he is dead, he says he remembers just hearing her voice. And next thing you know, he's kind of the idea of hearing his voice kind of made him come, like she wind up actually bringing him to Westview, if you will. So yeah, I do find that interesting also. But listen, we kind of know what Wanda's power set is. We know how powerful she certainly is proving to be. So maybe she has in fact kind of brought her brother back from the dead in a certain weird kind of way. Daniel also says, do you think that they are slowly introducing the X-Men? Random question. Baby steps. I don't necessarily know if the Evans Peters character Quicksilver is part of the X-Men Quicksilver. I don't know if I'm quite there yet to say that this is the same person. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe by the end of this season we do get sort of breadcrumbs that wind up dropping here, maybe ever so slightly, but we'll see. Let's see. And then Jonathan says the commercial. What's up, Jonathan? Appreciate you coming through, man. He says the commercial, I think, hinted at Wanda's magic being fed on. And let me throw this to you, Stuart, real quick, before we transition to another character outside of Pietro. This was the only commercial that we wind up seeing this week. Definitely reminded me of like a Go-Gurt or like a yogurt commercial or something like that. But it was it Yo Magic or something like that? Is that what it was this week, Stuart?
Yeah.
With the shark?
I believe so. Yo Magic for feeding the survivors.
Yeah. What did you think of the commercial? Did you make any connections to anything outside of the fact that it's just, I mean, she's promoting her magic, but the shark literally gives this guy on an island this yogurt and he can't open it. And he spends his whole entire rest of his life trying to open this thing and literally turns into a skeleton on the beach. I don't know how morbid and creepy that is, but I'm trying to figure out the purpose of this commercial. What do you think?
I think Jonathan nailed it. I think that's what it was hinting at, is maybe the idea that Wanda's magic is feeding on people. And it kind of brings me back to what I was talking about last week, because, morally, if what actually is happening at face value turns out to be what is actually going on with Wanda, because, I'm still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt because we still don't know the full story of what's going on. So I'm giving her as much of the benefit of the doubt.
This wasn't her heel turn to you?
Currently.
This wasn't her full heel turn to you?
Not yet. So I'm still like
Okay.
waiting to know for sure if she is 110% responsible for everything. But if she is, what she's literally doing is using other people's lives to, fulfill her own fantasy. And again, I still stand by that thing I said last week, which is when you're literally taking away their identity, who they are. To me, that's the same thing as killing them. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's so yeah. In other words, yeah, I do think Jonathan is onto something there, and I do think that is exactly what the commercial is hinting at.
Even maybe the idea of that her magic is feeding on them, or it seems almost like he said hinted at Wanda's magic being fed on, almost like maybe somebody else is using her
Mm,
abilities. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
yeah.
I'm going back to your question though, as far as like Wanda, using these people, if you will. To me, yeah, I don't know if I would compare it necessarily to killing, but it might as well be. And the only reason why I say that is everybody that we've seen so far that has come out of being under Wanda's spell has seemed very traumatic.
Yeah.
Very painful experience. Even in this episode, when Vision is walking around the town and you see him stop and he's looking at this lady who's doing just the repetitive motion of hanging up her Halloween ornaments and things like that. When you look at her, you can literally see a tear coming out of her eye, just literally dropping down her eye as she's doing it. So there is a struggle there that these people are having to deal with that Wanda is certainly controlling to a certain extent. Now, whether it's fully her, I don't know. I felt like this was kind of a heel turn, but maybe Marvel has a bit of a surprise for us here, as we do see Vision at least discovering a little bit more of the truth here. Do you think that this episode also maybe debunks the Agnes as Agatha theory that people were having, considering the fact that we see Agnes woken up here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say that, because I feel like if Agnes was Agatha, she would be trying to convince Vision that everything was normal and not to worry about anything. But no, when we got that awakening from her and her just trying to trying to get Vision to save them, and then her kind of going mad at the end there, I think that was, to me, that definitely felt like confirmation that Agnes is not Agatha.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way to me too. And I really loved all the revelations that we wind up getting here for Vision, because we do see that these two are butting heads, Wanda and Vision in here. Vision clearly has a detailed plan that he wants to embark on this week. The idea of kind of separating himself, getting away from Wanda so that he can kind of do his own thing, right? Not trying to push her buttons too much, but trying to be convincing enough to make her trust him and believe him that he's not going out and doing something, right? Like just the little references that he winds up making, saying, oh, well, these are the only clothes that I had, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of gives her that look when he comes down the steps, trying to convince her that, lying to her, also the idea that he's on a neighborhood watch here when he's really going out to kind of do some investigative work also. I love the tension, even the great performance by Elizabeth Olsen as Vision goes in to kiss her before he leaves, and she just has this look on her face as she like just turns to give him her cheek. It definitely looked like a "what are you up to" kind of look. Like, I'm not really feeling this vibe that you're giving me, Vision. And we clearly get to see that these two are struggling, just like the twins told us at the very top. What do you think about their relationship at this point?
I thought it made a lot of sense, because the very beginning worried me when you see Vision just acting like the previous episode didn't happen. But then kind of like realizing immediately afterwards when she asks the neighbor about where Vision's at, and then he reveals that he wasn't on shift today. He's not part of the neighborhood watch today. I think that was a good way to kind of reveal that no, Vision is still holding a grudge against her. He's still looking into what exactly is going on, and at this point, the previous episode, at the end of the previous episode, Wanda kind of proved to him that she's not going to be telling him anything that he wants to know, that if he is going to find the answers that he's looking for, he has to do it on his own.
Yeah, especially the mystery behind the children, right? Last week he just mentioned we're all the kids, and now we get to see all the kids. it's also interesting in here, you bring up Herb. Sometimes I think, again, Herb, that there are pieces, like there are certain characters in here that do sort of break ranks or break out of Wanda's spells a little bit. The idea of Herb here, when she talks to him and he realizes that something's up with Vision, he goes and asks her, he says, "Want me to change something for you?" Almost in a sense that he knows things aren't necessarily going Wanda's way, that maybe something has kind of gone off kilter, and he's almost understands that he's playing a bigger role in her sitcom or her game that she's kind of put on. It's moments that like that, it just give this season a hint of creepiness, man.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely agree. In fact, I do think that if you were to almost tell this exact same story, but just in the point of view of like just a random citizen at Westview who maybe is a little more resistant to the mind control than anyone else, this could have made a really good horror story for sure.
It really could have. It really could. It really could have. It's pretty, I don't want to say demented, but it's pretty creepy. Just some of the things that they're pulling off in this season, just kind of underlined with this bright sort of sitcom tribute, if you will. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so tuned in, because there are definitely some horror elements attached to this show. I mean, even the idea of like when we do see Vision going across the neighborhood, and as he gets closer and closer to the border, if you will, was it Ellis Avenue? I think that she winds up telling the kids, "Don't go past Ellis Avenue," and that's exactly where we see Vision by the end of this episode. The idea of seeing all the other people populated in this city not moving or going anywhere, it makes me feel as though Wanda doesn't put those people into play unless she's actually in that particular vicinity. That's the vibe that I'm getting, right? Like, why use all your power to make these random people move around if you're not even there to kind of play along with it, type of thing. What did you think about that, though, as far as the people of Westview, some of the people in Westview just not being utilized at all?
They definitely, it gave me a very video game-esque type of vibe, because when you look at certain areas in video games that you're supposed to go to, usually that's when you get the NPCs that have a little more of a complex pattern, a more detailed pattern of things that they're supposed to be doing. But a lot of times when you're kind of looking in the background of like a video game environment, you'll probably see like a weird, like kind of 2D loop playing out in the background, because it's not really meant to be looked at for that long. It's meant to just kind of be there as background, and that's it. But when you take the time to like really stare at it, you start to notice that the NPCs there don't tend to do the same things as the one that are more closer to you. They tend to just be the kind that walk back and forth and do the same repetitive thing over and over.
That's a really great comparison, Stuart. I never even contemplated it being along those lines, but I do like the way that you kind of put that together. That's a great comparison. So yeah, I mean, we get to see Vision in this episode, getting to the end of Westview, if you will, realizing that he does need to go out after his interaction with Agnes, realizing that he too himself is dead, not quite understanding what that fully means. But he definitely understands at least that there is a bigger picture that certainly surrounds this. And he gets a first glimpse as to that bigger picture as he finally breaks out of Westview to wind up seeing S.W.O.R.D and everybody else before he's kind of viciously almost like pulled apart or pulled in, or at least going back to his sort of deactivated stage, if you will, from when he was found at S.W.O.R.D, if I had to assume. Is that what you were kind of under the impression of also, Stuart?
I was under the impression of one of two things. Like, one, him leaving the him leaving the hex, as they call it, is going to kill him, because, you know, it's her power that's keeping him alive. So either that, or, you know, B, it might be the fact that her power really pulls people in and she doesn't let anyone leave unless she wants them to. And that's the only reason it didn't do the same thing to Monica when she was pushed out of the hex. So I think, yeah, either way, though, the number one thing about that scene that I got to give some props to is, man, the computer effects for him when he's like falling apart, looking super hollow. that just looked clean AF, and it looked just absolutely beautiful. Honestly, I absolutely love that whole moment. But yeah, it could mean one of two things, and I really hope it's not the first thing, because what I'm really hoping happens after this is I'm hoping Vision comes back and becomes like an Avenger again. But obviously, if it's the Hex that's keeping him alive, that probably won't happen.
Yeah, it definitely feels as though that's the only thing at this point that's kind of keeping him alive. I feel like once this barrier comes down and she stops using his abilities on him, Homeboy's going to go back to and revert to the same place that he was in at S.W.O.R.D after Avengers Infinity War. But we'll see what winds up happening to him. He hasn't quite escaped now, especially considering the fact that Wanda has kind of unleashed her abilities here. And I do want to talk about Wanda a little bit also, because she definitely is trying to come to grips and trying to understand some things on her own, especially when it comes to the Pietro stuff. So I love the sit down conversation that they wind up having, and really her opening up to why it is or how she came about doing this. And while for the most part, I don't necessarily know if she quite remembers the idea of why, like how she got to this particular point, or how she got this to this place with Westview. One of the things that she does say is that she just simply remembers feeling completely alone. She also says empty, almost like an endless nothingness, and I put to the point that she doesn't even remember how she began doing all this in the first place. And right after she says that, we do see another nightmare image, if you will, this time of Pietro. They've kind of teased this nightmare images. We've seen a dead Vision in the previous episode. Now we're seeing a nightmare vision of Pietro also. Again, this just for me just really solidifies just the levels of grief that that Wanda's certainly going through. Now, whether or not somebody is using that grief to maybe heighten her abilities or use it against her, who certainly knows? I mean, I definitely do feel that's the mystery behind this. But I love just her kind of breaking down all the feelings that she had to kind of go through. We've talked about her timeline, if you will, in this review. The idea of losing Vision, then being snapped away, then coming back, only to find, being a huge battle like that, come to find out he's still dead, type of thing. And then having to kind of sit with that. Your brother's dead. You don't have your family around anymore. She definitely has had to deal with a lot of loss in her life. And I think the fact that she expresses it that way, I think is just a really telling tale of the inability to handle grief when it hits you, and the things that grief can certainly make you do, even when you probably, whether or not she meant for all this to happen, who knows? But she definitely has some control over what's going on. So, what did you think about that moment, and how revealing of it was it to you for the Wanda character?
Decently, because yeah, like I said, I'm slowly losing that, giving her the benefit of the doubt episode by episode, because it seems like episode after episode, they really want you to know that, yeah, it's probably her responsible for the entire thing. The only thing slightly making me believe that it's not her is the fact that it's written by Marvel, and they tend to have their big twist ending that like will make you kind of look at it in a whole new way. But as of now, yeah, it definitely still, because whether or not she meant for this to happen, she still has the power to stop it. Seemingly, she has
most
power
definitely
to stop it.
Most definitely.
And the fact that she isn't doing it is still, not enough to justify her actions at all, to my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely not trying to justify her actions. I was just wondering your thoughts of just them revealing a little bit more of the levels of grief that she was going through.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. In fact, I actually think it was a really good parallel to Hayward, with him, because when he tried to say that the people who got dusted had it easy, that had to be one of the most one-sided statements I've seen in this show so far, because I can't imagine that being easy for anyone. Like, yes, I can see that, losing someone who gets dusted in the snap, that would be hard. However, the idea of coming back and, finding out that you lost someone, like both her and Monica have had to deal with, and in fact, in her case, the fact that she loses someone, but at the same time, it's she loses him on the day that everyone's like kind of considering it like a victory because they defeated Thanos, and everyone's sad that Tony dies, but no one's really giving her like condolences for Vision, because as far as they all know, he's been dead for like 5 years, so who cares anymore? It definitely reminded me of that kind of parallel with Hayward, how he's super one-sided about, oh no, us who didn't get snapped, we had it the hardest. But then when you look at both Monica and Wanda, I don't know why I blanked on her name there, but you look at both Monica and Wanda, like it's not easy for anyone, and it does suck that for her, I can totally see why she felt so alone after that, because everyone important to her in her life at that point had died. Like that it's not just Vision, but then the people that could have been there to comfort her, like Tony Stark and Captain America, weren't there, and more than likely we can kind of assume that Hawkeye was busy spending time with his family because he hadn't seen them in 5 years.
That's a good point. I mean, she's always kind of relied on Cap to kind of be there. We even see him in Civil War trying to kind of help talk to her a little bit through the incident that happened in Lagos. So you're right. I mean, even somebody that she looked up to in Captain America is nowhere around to kind of give her that guidance that she certainly needs. And you're right, her grief in a certain way kind of does parallel that of Monica Rambeau, and even a little bit towards Hayward. Just the idea of at least a lot of these people dealing with grief, but how do you personally handle it? I love seeing Monica talk about the idea that she truly believes that she can help Wanda through this because of the fact that they both are kind of going through losing somebody that they clearly love. And I love the fact that you bring up Hayward there. Let's go ahead and transition to Hayward and just S.W.O.R.D in general here, because you're right. I'm actually surprised that Monica didn't slap the hell out of this man when he said that line. And listen, not to take anything away from Hayward, I'm not trying to cover him at all, but I'm sure there are people that don't necessarily understand all the things that those that did get stuck, left behind, had to deal with, right? I mean, it's not a justification for Hayward, but it at least gives us an idea that the events that happened to those people that had to stay here through those 5 years probably really changed the mindset of a lot of people. I'm sure that there are a lot of people probably now in this world that are threatened even more once anything strange winds up happening, right? They probably think that this is going to happen again. There's danger out there a little bit more now. And I can see those people having to go through that trauma of their own, and all of a sudden now having these different ideologies that they had before, where it's almost like, you don't give things a chance anymore. It's very much of, you don't understand it, let's destroy it, let's take it out. We don't want to take any chances. And that's very much sort of the mindset it feels like when it comes to Hayward. Clearly, it definitely feels as though he definitely has more going on here, but I do love just the view of him, at least, how he's handling his grief and really using that as a sense to, it's almost like it's scared him. And now he's making these really terrible decisions based off of fear because of what happened 5 years ago. And the fact that he's now pushing that on Monica, talking that you don't know what you're talking about, that you had it easy. Monica came back to her mom dying. Like, how is that easy for anybody, bro? Right? So everybody definitely is dealing with their own ways. And I love how they at least focused a little bit more on the grieving, not only of Wanda, but Monica, and even to a certain extent, Hayward in here. Again, not giving excuses for Hayward, but at least I love the idea that they gave us a point of view for him.
I fully agree with that. I think Hayward, or the head of S.W.O.R.D is the villain for someone. Definitely a huge possibility, but I think it's less of him working for someone and more of him like kind of having his own personal agenda. Because I still do think that what he was doing with Vision had to have been probably weaponizing him, and I think that was the excuse me. And I think that was the main reason that Wanda, initially tried to break Vision free, and maybe just having his corpse is what like completely broke her and had her waking up into Westview into the way that it was, something like that. But But yeah, going back to Hayward and what you were saying about like, yeah, his way of dealing with grief. Yeah, I can totally also see that perspective. Again, not justifying it of, yeah, an unknown threat. The last time we faced an unknown threat, half the universe died and no one had a fighting chance. Because I can imagine that being like the scariest part about it is that half of, the entire universe dies and no one had a chance to stop it because no one even knew this was like a threat that was out there. It's like, it's I can just only imagine like how traumatizing that can be for someone. So, I totally get that point of view without, justifying his actions, because yeah, I do think that, it's not even a matter of morality of what he's doing of trying to just put an end to Wanda by killing her. I think it's a matter of straight up stupidity, because like Monica herself also says, the idea of like just killing or ending it, that doesn't that sounds nice in a perfect world, but again, this is a threat that you're not fully able to comprehend what its full potential is. So for all killing her could either make it worse, like we already see the hex growing at the end of this episode. For all we know, it could make it so that hex does not stop growing, or it just makes it so it's there permanently. Either way, the easiest way, and I don't mean it in like the morality kind of way, I mean like in the smart strategical way, would be to try to negotiate with Wanda. And the worst part about like, I think his reaction to that interaction that he had with Wanda in the previous episode is he definitely, to me in this episode, came off as as such a bullshit, as an asshole for sure, but as such a good bullshitter, because he's able to bullshit himself. Because the moment he tried to say she has no interest in negotiating with us, it came off to me as that's actually what he believed. That's actually how he believes it happens. And because we see that he survives, I can only imagine he's going to be that good at convincing the U.S. government that that's like actually what happens because of that.
Yeah, man. Total bullshitter for sure, man. And for me, again, you make a good point. It's really the idea of reacting out of fear. Instead of actually having to sit down, strategic, thinking things over. It's just something you don't understand. You don't want the 5-year blip to happen again. You just see somebody with this incredible ability and it terrifies you. So let's just kind of destroy it. Right. And so, that's definitely not the way to certainly handle the situation. But again, when you've dealt with those 5 years of having lost everybody, I can see why it would certainly push people to that area. But I love the idea that Monica just kind of calls him out to be a coward. The fact that that you're not willing to sit down and try and figure things out the hard way. You just wanted to kind of take the easy way out. So I just thought it was odd. And I don't want to say it was odd, but for me, it was just it really just showed Hayward's character, especially after we just saw the scene where he's welcoming her back, praising her mom, and now he's insulting her, saying your mom would be ashamed of you or something like that, or the idea of you not being able to live up to her expectations or whatever the case may be, make the hard decisions. Again, I'm surprised Monica didn't slap the shit out of him. Honestly, I really am.
He definitely, to me, in this episode comes off as the he wants to give orders and he doesn't want to be questioned about them, no matter how, which is the exact type of leader you do not want to have, especially with an agency like S.W.O.R.D, when you can only imagine the type of weapons and the type of like power an agency like that would have.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there, man. A couple quick honorable mentions I wanted to go ahead and bring up in here. I love the fact that they referred to Wanda's costume as a Sokovian fortune teller. I thought that was pretty cool that she came up with that. And then also let's talk a little bit about Monica, because Monica has decided that, or at least I think she's decided on the idea that she wants to maybe go back in order to kind of help Wanda try and figure things out. But we quickly see Darcy puts a stop to it, or at least warns her before she even thinks about going back inside, that Monica's cells are actually changing due to her being in and out of the hex barrier a couple times. I know we talked about this last week. Indy brought up the idea of the scans that they wind up doing on her. And when we saw the results, they were just like all white, or just you couldn't read them at all. I know Indy was on the impression that maybe I can't remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Indy said he thought that maybe she had already acquired these powers and this is how they're finding out. But I think we might have been on the other spectrum, in the sense that I felt like her coming in, or being maybe thrown out of the hex, or at least maybe being inside the hex, is kind of what is at the point of kind of giving her her abilities. And it feels as though that's the route that they're going. The idea that she's entered and has left the hex, maybe going in clearly on her own and forcefully being thrown out. Maybe going in and out of that barrier messes around with your cells, according to Darcy. So do you think this is sort of an origin story, if you will, for Monica Rambeau to be another Captain Marvel or another Photon at some point?
That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. The moment Darcy brings up her cells being like genetically altered,
like, yep.
And yeah, I'm like, okay, so this is definitely an origin story for her for sure.
And I'm super pumped for it too, because I know Monica's supposed to be back for Captain Marvel 2 as well. So I would be curious to know if Monica's going to be, if that's going to be like present day, or if that's going to be another, another story kind of told in the past, to kind of see Monica grow up with Captain Marvel. Who knows? But we'll see what we wind up getting in Captain Marvel 2. But she definitely plans on returning at some point in time in a movie. So yeah, it definitely feels as though this is in fact Monica getting her abilities for the very first time. I'm trying to think, is there anything else in particular that caught your eye this week that you wanted to talk about, Stuart?
Oh man, I think we about covered everything in the whole thing. I'll say this though: the fact that S.W.O.R.D is tracking specifically Vision throughout the entire thing, and that they kept that, again, more things that Hayward is keeping a secret from everyone. It again kind of leads to my big theory that, yeah, I think without a doubt they were up to something, and I still think it's weaponizing Vision, whether or not it is to create a new Ultron. Or I even saw a theory recently that what if this is going to be the new origin story for the Sentinels from X-Men, which I think would also be kind of cool. So instead of it being done by Trask, it's done by S.W.O.R.D, but for the same general reason of taking down any threats that are different, that aren't normal to his eyes.
Well, that's interesting. I never contemplated the Sentinel aspect of things, but maybe he could be that Trask if you wish. But you're right in regards to Vision. I mean, the fact that they have a tracker on Vision makes me feel very much like they felt that Vision was theirs, a sense of ownership, if you will, right? Maybe experimenting and working on him in ways that they certainly wouldn't, because it did surprise me. Again, the fact that Hayward didn't tell anybody that he had somebody on the inside, right? Or at least not necessarily that Vision knows he's on the inside for S.W.O.R.D, but that they're able to track him. The fact that they figured things out. Again, Hayward certainly keeping his secrets, but it definitely does lean into the idea that maybe S.W.O.R.D was doing some things with Vision that they certainly weren't supposed to. So I'm loving the way that this is kind of coming together. I mean, we do get the opportunity to see at the very end when the twins, the Maximoff twins, Billy and Tommy, tell her mom that, hey, dad's in trouble type of thing. We get to see Wanda using her abilities. When you think she should be shrinking this hexagon, if you will, she just expands it in order to encapsulate everything to further protect her family, if you will. And not only do we see Vision brought back into the hex, but we also get to see majority of the S.W.O.R.D agents and everything that certainly was out there outside of Westview. So now they're in this bigger hexagon, and I gotta say, Stuart, I have no idea what Darcy's going to turn into when we see her next week. Everybody else turned into circus clowns, circus acts. It definitely felt like they even put up a big old tent and stuff. It felt like a festival or a carnival or a circus or whatever. So I'm wondering, I wonder if Darcy will come back as a bearded lady or something next week. I wonder what Darcy would be. Do you, any suggestions or clues as to what you think she might turn out to be?
No idea. Probably I think it'd be funny if she became a love interest for Pietro, personally.
Ooh. I mean, I wouldn't mind that either, honestly. Now that you bring that up. Yeah, give Evan, I mean, I love Evan Peters already. So yeah, give him something else to work with for next week. That'd be pretty fantastic. Yeah, I could oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure. There are a couple, just if I'm kind of going with sitcom tropes that I could see, I could see her kind of do either going with that direction, or have her be maybe if we have the kids going to school in the next episode, she could be a teacher or something.
Oh, good point. Yeah, because I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we do jump yet another decade. I feel like I thought I heard them talk about the idea of maybe doing a Modern Family type of take. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe that's the next jump that they wind up handling. I don't know. We'll see what the next sitcom certainly is going to be. And I am wondering if this is going to be, do you think they're going to continue doing sitcoms all the way to the final episode? Or do you think maybe, I feel like maybe episode 7 would probably be the last one, and then maybe a full on cinematic feel for the last 2 episodes? What do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, I think if they do a sitcom, it's next episode is going to be the last one. And yeah, I think Modern Family would make sense as the last sitcom to end it on.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens, guys. But listen, at the end of the day, guys, we want to know your thoughts. What did you think about this week's episode? I personally loved it. If there's any particular character moments or storyline plots that you certainly missed, or that you want us to certainly talk about that perhaps we missed, definitely go ahead and let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below. And as so you were saying, I mean, overall, you enjoyed the episode, but it just didn't hit you maybe quite like the other episodes, right? I mean,
yeah, I think that was my biggest issue with this episode is that I really did like it, but with the exception of the conversation between Wanda and her brother, and the scene with Vision at the very end, it just felt so empty in a lot of ways because I was enjoying it all the way through, and then it just kind of ended, and I'm just kind of like, oh, that was it. We don't get any more because at least the other episodes, while they're short, they all feel like there's a really satisfying conclusion to all of them. Here was the first time it kind of felt unsatisfying the way things ended. It felt like it really could have used like at least 1 or 2 more scenes to get me going, but really it just kind of felt like I was in the middle of watching a movie and then the power went out.
Yeah, I think because I think we end on Wanda's eyes opening up after the hexagon grows, and I just remember thinking to myself when I watched it, for me at least, I kind of found it to be a little bit of a jaw-dropping ending, but I get the abruptness of it, so I get where you're coming from. But for me, like I looked at it and I just thought to myself, no, you're going the wrong way, Wanda. Why are you no, don't do this. Don't prove them right. No, like I was so upset. I don't want to say upset, but I was so shocked that that's the route that she took. And so to see the hex expand and then to end on just Wanda's eyes, I thought was just menacing, and I thought was just a really interesting point to end on that scene, because to me it definitely comes across as, nah, this is on me, guys. Like this is me handling everything that's going on in here. So I'm almost out of the loop that there's somebody else playing up with her, like the Mephisto stuff. I think I might be out on now. I think I might even be out on the Agatha stuff. If I am thinking about anybody that might be connected to this, I'm thinking Nightmare. I'm thinking just Nightmare. And the only reason why I'm thinking Nightmare is because we have had these really 2 terrifying sequences of a dead Vision and a dead Pietro. And I don't know if that's just her grief coming back to haunt her. But I think even Pietro winds up dropping the word nightmare a couple times in this episode also, if I'm not mistaken. I might have to go back and check it out. I'm definitely leaning that route just a little bit. And for me, I honestly would not mind or wouldn't be surprised if we do at some point get ourselves a Doctor Strange sighting, maybe in the season finale in here. Because I almost wonder if we are going to have a conclusion to this Wanda story by the time it ends, or does it just really get that out of hand? And maybe we do need the Doctor. You know what I'm saying? To bring him in. How do you think this might end, man? Any thoughts?
Honestly, I think the story within Westview is going to have a complete conclusion, but I do think we are going to get like a cliffhanger about who the real villain was. And yeah, I think Nightmare at this point is the best guess. I know a lot of people were expecting Mephisto. Now I'm with you. I'm kind of going with Nightmare at this point. And I think we are going to have an after credit scene during the last episode that's going to have Benedict Cumberbatch cameoing as Doctor Strange in order to set up Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
I like that, man. I like that idea of a post credit scene. I do like that. So yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see what happens. But yeah, there's so many theories out there, man. This show has me every day thinking back and forth as to what's going on. Me and the girlfriend converse about it also, to try and figure out like what's the mystery going on behind here. So who knows if there's anybody pulling the strings or if it's truly Wanda by herself. But I got to tell you, the way that they ended off this episode, talk about painting Wanda in a certain light. And damn it, Wanda, come back. Come back to the good side. Come back. But we'll see, man. All this red has just got me thinking of the dark side. So we'll see what happens, man. But Stuart, I think that'll probably wrap it up for us here this week. If people want to reach out to you, man, on social media, where can they find you? And any last words on the episode, if you got any?
Yeah, though the ending felt empty, it was still a really awesome episode, in my opinion, and I really enjoyed it. And you guys can follow me at TurboStew01.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. And hopefully we'll get Indy back next week. But we'll definitely keep you guys posted in regards to that. But regardless, we will in fact be back for WandaVision next week as we tackle episode number 7, guys. So remember, every Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time, join us and let your thoughts be heard as well. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so right here at A+ Opinions. You can find us very actively on our Facebook page along with our Twitter account. And you can also catch us over on Instagram as well as Twitch for you gamers as well. So other than that, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for us here. So in the meantime, do us a big favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. And if you love our content each and every week, give us that big thumbs up, guys. Hit that like button if you certainly can. It definitely helps YouTube recognize our work and recommends it to other people. So until next time, guys, do us a big favor, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And as always, keep it A+. We'll talk to you later. Bye.